Good evening. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce Fumihiko Maki, one of the greatest architects of our time. He is considered a master of space shaping and a sorcerer of light. He's called that name because he's not only the creator of harmoniously conceived spaces, but also in making the presence of light tangible through brilliant manipulation of materials. This year marks 50th year of his practice, Maki and Associates, which he founded in 1965 in Tokyo. Therefore, it is a special honor and privilege for us to hear his speech tonight in celebration of his sustaining and globally influential career in architecture. He is a graduate of Tokyo University in 1952. He also graduated from Cranbrook Academy in 1953 and from Harvard Graduate School of Design in 1954. As one of the most prominent alumni of our school, he gave a memorable speech last year. The students were enthralled, energized, and inspired to learn of a trajectory of his long and productive career. He has been an incredibly prolific architect with diverse body of work, not only in Japan and in his native city of Tokyo, but also around the globe. That includes Yerba Buena Center for Arts in San Francisco, MIT Media Lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Tower 4 here in the World Trade Center site, the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, and Novartis facilities in Basel, Switzerland, and East Orange, New Jersey. His buildings have grace and elegance. His spaces are generous and welcoming and scaled to human activities. His architecture has a distinguishing trait in that he does not impose a recognizable style, yet one can detect a Maki building from miles away. This effect can be best described through the fact that he is ultimately an urbanist who breathes and absorbs the air of each city and is intuitively able to adapt his work to the essential quality of each place. In Tokyo, this is especially an important attitude for an architect because of the rapid proliferation of generic buildings that is fast destroying special characteristics of that city. In Maki's buildings, such as TV Asahi, The Spiral, and Hillside Terrace project, which has been spanning more than 35 years of generative work, they embody an atmosphere unique to urban life of Tokyo, and most importantly, these are, without fail, very stylish places that everyone wants to be in and they've been seeing it. They exude a type of spirited elegance, also an essential quality of native Kyoto Tokyoites. We call it Iki. And Maki-san himself is also a wonderfully spirited gentleman. He is one of a few architects who act as a public intellectual, voicing his opinions, writing essays, and appearing in interviews to promote balanced view on architecture and society. Last year, I was very lucky to share stage with Maki-san in Kanazawa on the topic of saving modernist architecture in Japan. There, I was astonished to find that he was able to go back to renovate his own buildings built nearly half a century ago, a feat only possible for someone who started a career at a very young age and able to continue and expand his practice with amazing resilience and continuity. With his stature and status, he essentially acts as a conscience of our society. From time to time, he has been kind enough to send me his essays, books, and publications, which are numerous, and articles that illustrate his stance on the state of affairs. However, recently, this particular activity has increased in intensity and frequency. His opinion of the new Olympic Stadium controversy has taken over the internet, and it is trending. He is a winner of the Pritzker Architecture Prize in 1993. The same year, he won gold medal from Union of International Architects and Arnold Brunner Memorial Prize in Architecture. He is a recipient of a Premium Imperiale in 1999 and AIA Gold Medal in 2011. To conclude my introduction, I will read an excerpt from a citation of Pritzker Prize jury. Maki has described creation in architecture as, quote, discovery, not invention, a cultural act in response to the common imagination or vision of the time, unquote. Further, he believes, quote, it is the responsibility of the architect to leave behind buildings that are assets to culture. Fumihiko Maki makes these statements, and then he makes them into reality of architecture. Please welcome Fumihiko Maki.
Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction by Toshiko-san. What she said is more than I deserve. But since I understand we have a time problem, I just go into my presentation. And I must introduce myself, my early age. I have two mentors, Mr. Tange, the University of Tokyo, and also Jose Luis Sard at the GSD Harvard, where I studied and also taught later. And we also had wonderful colleagues, both in Japan and Europe. Also, of course, in the United States as well. And metabolist people all passed away except me and Kikutake, Kurokawa, Otaka. And then there are team 10 people. And there's a strong connection between Harvard and the team 10 people. But also, Mr. Tange's first appearance in Europe was 1951 in the Siam Congress, where Sard was the chairman. And his project in Hiroshima made him well known in the international scene of architecture and so on. But still, the central figure at that time for every architect was Le Corbusier, as you all know. But he is not influential in his design, but also he was always wearing bow ties. And this is a picture. Myself, 1958, when I was explaining my first project in St. Louis, and I was wearing the bow tie. Last year, I had a chance to give a talk at GSD, and I visited the archive of Harvard. And I was amazed to see they have a collection of bow ties of very well-known architects like Gropius and Marcel Breuer. I'm quite sure they must have had also bow tie of Le Corbusier. But I would like now go into one of the projects. This is the crematorium I made in 1997 in Kyushu Island. And crematorium is not a really welcome facility in Japan because often they come into a tight sort of site and also to build things which are not necessary to be very pleasant. But the mayor of the city decided to also developed the small park in the front, and then a crematorium behind it. And as you know, in Japan, it requires certain rituals. You arrive at this court, then coming into an entrance, and there is a place for the first farewell, and then final farewell. And then they must wait in this place until cremation is done. Then they all come to an enshrinement room to collect the bones and ashes and go back. I'd like to show you. This is a view, and we try to make the crematorium to be several pieces of small or large sculpture with prayer hall, and just behind here there is a waiting space and the crematorium itself, but with the turf to be raised to cut off the height and the scale of these elements. Entrance hall, then through a screen, you turn right, then go into the place. This is a place where you have a first the farewell, and we try to always control the natural light. Then you go through this screen again and come to this place where you have a final farewell to the beloved. And we created small court at the center with water and sky, that's all. And it's a very symbolic sort of a place to just observe. And then after that, you will be waiting at this place for approximately 1 hour. And after that, you come into enshrinement room where the families, friends share the bones and ashes, and then go home. So it takes about a couple of hours to perform the ritual. And then one more scene of this garden, park, and the crematorium. When I go to this city after the building was completed, I was greeted by people who said, now we can die in peace. This is the biggest compliment I've ever received as an architect in my life. And so for me, in architecture, it's very important how the place being appreciated, and sometimes, not in this case, but enjoy. We did the Performing Arts Center in Bihar, which is the east of Hiroshima, small city with a population of about 100,000 people. But they decided to recreate the big Performing Arts Center in the city park, where they had the original and old facility. And so since it is near the ballpark and also children's place and frontal park. I have decided to make this building to be like a pavilion. Usually, when you build a performing arts center of this size, they try to make impressive foyer, but instead, I thought this could be a small pavilion sitting on the park. And then this was a picture I took just the day before the opening. And small child is after the mother, and they even haven't noticed the building. And I was very pleased to see this kind of scenery. And also, when this frontal foyer used, if there is no performance, this is the interior of the hall. And you see, on the left side, sometimes people who visit the park are just able to be sitting and chatting and in a quiet place, or children are playing a ball in front garden. But also, sometimes unexpected things happen. The picture above is a wedding ceremony, which I have not really thought about, but also some small performance in the evening, where a small number of the people would be can use this place. So this kind of happening always makes the architect very happy, something you haven't expected. And sometime on the left side, it's perhaps people in the intermission, and a big sort of performance behind, or the place used by people for some kind of ceremony. And those things always prove that the building itself were used by the people, users, and so on. I did campus in mid-Tokyo in the Kitasenju. Kitasenju is one of the big also station here, and then we built the high-rise campus, and then since it is in the middle of existing the neighborhood and shops and so on, after the discussion with the local government, we decided to make this campus completely free, no wall, no gate. So people are able to pass through those places freely throughout the day. And there is a frontal part, but also created a small loggia in here to be also used by students and also people. And the one on the left side is a loggia in maybe Italy, in one of the places, which are called probably a city room. Now on the right side is our loggia, where some people just sit and enjoy their conversation. But also, here we have a central plaza for university and cafeteria faces, and both side and frontal part is university proper. But one day, kindergarten teachers brought the children. Again, this is an unexpected scene. And probably the kindergarten were much smaller one. So she thought maybe good to have kids in here. And you see, you could see the scenery. I think I found out kids love to hug the round columns, maybe like hugging the mothers. And this kind of a scenery was also unexpected when we designed this one. And Tokyo is still quite a safe city, and such scenery would occur. I did the performing arts centers in Natori. It's a suburban city of Sendai. But the right side picture shows the Natori also had a big tsunami. And the density of the tsunami is indicated in this red color. And fortunately, the building was saved from tsunami attack. And the one on the left is a picture we took before tsunami. But after the tsunami, many refugees came in and stayed there for quite many months, since we were able to provide all services in electricity, water, and some temporary sleeping bags and so on. And one of my friends in Germany thought perhaps he has a foundation and wanted to donate a small facility to this city. And I was consulted, and after discussion, we decided to have this small community center right behind the art center we did. There's a big park and also parking places. And it took only a year or so to provide this small facility. And also, we, Maki and Associates, donated our service too. And it's made by wood, and it's a series of spaces under this roof, and people can use for a number of activities, and the piano is also donated by somebody and so on. And also some people donated the books, and the people, children come and enjoy reading and so on. So this was a small contribution we did for area attacked by the tsunami. We did the Jewish community of Japan, JCC, about 6 years ago. And the community of Jewish people in Japan are not so big. Most of them are in Tokyo and Kobe and other places. Those two pictures showed the old center in Tokyo. And when it became old, somebody donated money. So we are able to recreate with the same sort of architectural restriction, volume and height. I was warned by my friend, when you do Jewish center, it is not so easy because when there are 5 board members, there will be always 12 opinions. And fortunately, in our case, we have 2 nice intermediaries who were able to sort out the opinions and convey to us. So it went fairly well without too much problem. We thought perhaps the frontal wall should have same indication of synagogue, and with a light, and you have to go through here to come up to an entrance, and then we have a small synagogue, and with the skylight at the center, and also hanging the light is a symbol, also synagogue. And we try to make it a very warm place, and the granite in the front are brought from Israel, and some old furnitures are here, in there, and so on, and so on. And now also we did the Tokyo Church of Christ, 1995, and it faces to west and a busy street, and we made a shoji-like big screen to bring a light, and also the ceiling is a metaphor of sky, and hanging lighting fixture, the stars. And in the late evening, the facade becomes pink. And this is the also prayer hall, non-denominational, in the crematorium I showed you before. But we also did a small or medium-sized museum to house the ancient findings, just near to Izumo Shrine. Izumo Shrine is one of the 3 revered shrines in Japan. Ise Shrine, and then Itsukushima, Hiroshima, and this one. And you see that. And this particular place happened to be a gateway for people and commodities coming from China via Korea. And also, the iron came from India. So this is a place where we first developed ironwork. And we thought it might be good to use curtain to commemorate this history. And you see curtain, and also here, and here, and that. And so I quite often enjoy using the curtain. Now, I had a chance to design the new museum in this is the exhibit space. But also, I had a chance to design the Bihar Museum, Patna. Patna is the capital of Bihar, where the Buddha was born. And the picture on the right was I took 1959, and what impressed me was the masses of people and greenery and artifacts. And we also decided to use the curtain extensively for this project. And now it is under construction, and you see there is a sandstone for a base, and then curtain on top, and with the Children's Museum here and central sort of portion. And then we have extensive galleries to show the findings in sort of historical, chronological sort of process. We are making this project right now, but probably the Indian construction is not as punctual as Japan, so we are a little bit behind the schedule, but they don't apologize too much. This is the central part, and then there is a corridor surrounding the series of open space, and then this is the only images where we are going to have the central seat. This picture was taken from behind, from the air. The airport is very nearby, and somebody sent me these pictures, and you see the office here, and then children's and a series of galleries and here as well. And there is a political date to complete, just as you face quite often. And only part of our building will be completed by this summer. And their opening might be sometime next year. Now I go to the United States, and this is the MIT project. Our media lab is here, and there is a 100 Memorial Drive. It's a building completed when I was student at GSD. And the Dean Surt and Pietro Berluschi, the Dean of MIT, a very good friend. And I never forget the time when we GSD students with the MIT students invited to top of Memorial Hall. And the building was jointly done by young architects, and in that time, MIT people like Ralph Lapson and Carl Koch, and maybe Hugh Sabin, Anderson, and so on. And Lapson lost his arm on the wall, but he was deftly sort of holding his glass of martini. This I remember very well. Yeah, but I've never thought I'll be designing a building next to this one after 50 years. And Nicholas Negroponte, the head of institute, asked me to do a big house. How you could make a big house in this place. And we thought the bigness, the awareness in a house will be provided in the sight lines, horizontally, vertically, and sometimes diagonally. And with 7, the lavatory, we could produce such a requirement. And it was covered by aluminum screen because in Massachusetts, if you make just building, only half of the wall could be glass. But Nicholas wanted to have good view of the outside Therefore, we provided the screen to cut off the sun energy in daytime. And also with styling, the facade indicate where those lavatories are behind. And there is a corner terrace, and from which you could have a good view of Boston and also the main part of MIT campus. Now, on the middle level, you are able to have the view of both to below or to above or other places. And this place could be used for a number of activities, including disco parties. And the lavatory is free to be visited by anybody. In MIT, they have a military contract, and often the places are shut by wall and also steel doors. But in media law, there is no probably military contract, and people are free to visit and chat and do something. You could see how these spaces are multiple sidelines and so on. And you see there is a cafe on the fifth floor, and also you have a good view of Boston. And our co-architect, Andre, was there. Yes, yes. Anyway, and I tell you a very funny story. I went to KO, one of the oldest institutions. From it attached the elementary school to prep school. And they didn't have architecture school, so I went to the University of Tokyo and then Harvard. I studied in those three great institutions, but I also taught. I built in University of Tokyo and Keio, but not in Harvard. So that was my last wish. Then, quite many years ago, I think Rudinstein was head of Harvard. And when he came to Tokyo, he said that Harvard wished us, Maki and Associate, to do a master plan of new business school across the Charles River. I was very glad, finally might be completed. Then I had a commission from this MIT, and no more talk from Harvard. And I found out there's no architect in this world who did the both MIT and Harvard as a prime architect. And Corbusier did the Carpenter Center in Harvard, but nothing in MIT. Alvar Aalto did a famous Baker House in MIT, but not in Harvard. So this must be an unwritten rule of the game among architects. That's a view in night. We also did the building for University of Pennsylvania some time ago. And US campus is the collection of architecture in style in the different ages, from ancient to Renaissance, Gothic, Renaissance, and many moderns. And my building was next to this Tudor Gothic and the brick building, and modern in 1960. So I decided to make this building to be harmonious to both building or neighbors building. And I decided to use the double curtain wall, the one outside with glass and aluminum screen, but with a movable wooden facade just behind. I was standing this place after the opening, and somebody came and talked to me. It's a nice building, isn't it? You see, he of course didn't know I was an architect, and I didn't know who he was. He was not the architect, and but the building must have established some kind of a rapport with the people. I think this is always very important for me, sometimes more important than opinion of architectural critique. And it's a movable, and we try to make the building warm. This is one of very popular sort of place for professors. You see, in university, Nicholas, for instance, want to have a very cool sort of places, but professors in philosophy, mathematics, literature may like to have a little bit warmer sort of environment for their study too. And this two facade is here, and summertime hot air will be sucked up, and wintertime they provide good insulation, but also there is a small opening here. So manually you can open this small opening when there's a good season. And so environmentally also it is a very sophisticated project. I like to go into our latest project in North America. It's Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, where I also gave a short speech yesterday. The Aga Khan, His Highness, wrote me a letter of 5 pages before I started design. He wanted to have this building to be good with the natural light. This must be also Islamic tradition. And so we went to search for whitest granite in this world. It took a year or so, and finally we found the material in Brazil called margarita. You don't forget because it's like Italian pizzas. And anyway, so we slightly bended the two-story facade where you could see a little bit difference of color. I think this is one way to also indicate the building of 2-story high. And this part was aluminum, is a cap of hole. And there was a big opening last September, and also Charles Korea from India did the Ismaili Center on the side. And a couple of weeks ago, the central garden designed by Lebanese landscape architect also completed. We also created the central court around which people can mingle. And we have galleries and children's study areas and information centers and the foyer for auditorium. All accessible to this central court equally. Usually in a big museum, they try to celebrate the galleries, and then the big foyer to impress the people. But the other facilities sometimes will be put aside, and instead we decided that the gate will be charged in those entrances, but not at main approaches. So the court would have a fairly relaxed sort of atmosphere, and sometimes the center will be for performance or some exhibition. And yesterday, when I was there, people are eating also outside and so on. So I was very pleased again to see this kind of scenery, and we have galleries with small skylight, as well as controlled sort of a screen facing outside. This is the interior of the auditorium. There's 7 bending. In Islam, 7 is important numbers, and 8 is important number in China. So each culture has a different appreciation on the numbers. Now, the last big project is for WTC. And this was a picture taken by, shown in the New York Times, 2005, when we had a public announcement. You see Richard Rogers, Norman Foster, and Daniel Berskin, and Governor Pataki, Silverstein, and myself. This was a picture taken when we had the first public sort of a show for our project. But as you know, unfortunately, after Lehman shock, number 2, number 3 are held and for some time. So number 1 by SOM and number 4 by us proceeded. And we had a partial opening 2 years ago. We tried to make the glass, the sculpture of glass, and so it has an interesting reflection of light, but also the scene around it. Also, we try to have some kind of conversation with the memorial park. And we use the same black granite for wall behind this lobby. But also, we try to have media art at the end of elevator corridor. The theme was sky, tree, and water, which are also themes of this place. The picture on the left side is one I took when I was Amtrak from Philadelphia to here, 1973. And you could see these two original World Trade Centers as a shadow on Hudson River. This was before financial center was built between the river and the building. And the right side one is very interesting. You see number 1 and number 4. But as some people thought, sometime our building, number 4, disappears. And this picture shows only number 1 and no 4. So accidentally, our building might have become homage of old World Trade Center. Now from here is a film. Our broadcasting center in Japan took with me for this project. It's a part of a long one, but we show you only the last few minutes of the film.
As we all know, 13 years ago, a terrible tragedy has happened. I myself remember when I used to live in the States, there was a twin tower, a very symbolic building right behind us, and now it's gone.
On September 11th, 2001, terrorists launched multiple attacks against the United States, bringing down the iconic World Trade Center towers in New York and killing roughly 3,000 people. Where the Twin Towers once stood, there is now a memorial dedicated to the victims, featuring giant reflecting pools in the footprints of the towers. Around the pools are slabs of black granite with bronze plaques on which the names of all the victims are inscribed. In the 13 years since the horror of 9/11, an endless stream of visitors has brought their flowers and prayers to this site. Next to the memorial, there are newly built skyscrapers.
One of the skyscrapers is designed by a Japanese architect. He's a very important Japanese architect who created the modernism and the contemporary architecture today, Fumihiko Maki.
Fumihiko Maki is one of Japan's most renowned architects. He designed the new 4 World Trade Center building. 2 years after 9/11, redevelopment plans for the World Trade Center were announced. 4 skyscrapers to be designed by world-famous architects. In November 2013, Maki's building was the first of the 4 to be completed.
It's partially completed, not entirely.
2, 3. All right.
In September 2014, Maki came to New York and paid a visit to the building he designed.
How do you know I am Maki?
I know because I looked at the plans and I met you when the tower opened up in November 2013. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I see. You have a
A good memory, thank you. Beautiful tower, beautiful. Thank you.
4 World Trade Center rises 977 feet, about 300 meters. It has 72 above ground and 4 below ground floors.
非常に挑戦的なコミッションでもあったわけですね。ガラスで一つの彫刻作ろうっていう、そういう意思がこの初めからあったということですね。
The dominant feature of the building is its glass facade. A special process was used to make the glass reflect light like stainless steel or aluminum, creating a mirror of the sky and nearby building. 4 World Trade Center often melts away into its surroundings. Maki created a building that is unobtrusive and elegant. The lobby of the building is an airy open space with 13-meter ceilings. The floor-to-ceiling windows make the adjoining Memorial Plaza clearly visible from the lobby. And opposite the windows is a black wall that extends to the ceiling.
ここにブラックグラニットの壁にしまして、でこれはミラーエフェクト、鏡の役目を果たして、で向こうのメモリアルパークが全部、映り込むという形で強い関係性をやはり作りたいっていうのが一つの考え方ですね。
The water, trees, and sky, key elements of the Memorial Plaza, can also be felt inside the building. Moreover, on the back wall of each of the 3 elevator halls, video of flowing water, green trees, and blue sky runs on a loop.
それ見てみんなが入るわけですけど、帰ってくると今度はメモリアルパークが見えると。そういうイメージの関係を作ろうっていう。
Before 9/11, Maki had visited New York countless times and seen the Twin Towers, of course. Here is a photograph he took in 1993 of the towers reflecting the sunset. September 11th, 2014. Huge crowds fill the Memorial Plaza. Standing beside the vast reflecting pools which testify to the Twin Towers that once soared here, visitors contemplate the tragic events of 9/11. What do the visitors think of Maki's 4 World Trade Center building?
I think it's great. I think they did an excellent job. You know, it was pretty tall and nice. I haven't been inside yet, but I'm hoping to.
I think also it's a wonderful piece of architecture. It reflects the beauty of the city, the beauty of the souls that are unfortunately expired here in this area, and we love coming here. It brings such a warm feeling, much emotion.
Maki's tower reflects something more as well, the thoughts of those who come to the memorial.
Thank you.
Mr. Maki is what you call in Japanese Toki no Hito, is a person in the middle of very large controversy about the new Olympic Stadium. And there's a part of presentation that he had prepared for us, and we are going to make it a Q&A format that I'm going to ask him about it. So
Shall we go?
I think so, perhaps.
Please continue.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And it's been interesting to me because, as I said in my introduction, he's been sending me materials and writings, but he's been in opposition against this particular plan even before Tokyo was designated as Olympic site. And he was going to publish his papers, but you withheld it until the decision final, because if you thought that if it's not going to go ahead, it will not make any difference. But you were very well prepared when the plans came up and that Tokyo was designated. So perhaps you could update us.
I can show you quickly the chronological development. And the result of international competition announced November 2012. And I wrote the small essay in Japanese in August 15th, 2013. Then the Japanese are very quiet at the time, although with social media, I could receive quite a bit of reaction or responses from unknown people. And but then the selection of Tokyo as 2020 Olympic was announced September 8th. Then now just images of a building become a reality for people in Tokyo, in Japan, and so on. And when the cost estimate of the competition was announced, it was 3 billion yen, and against 1.3 billion they have announced. So it's quite high. And the Japanese team with Zaha's team went to a smaller project, but still now today it is a very expensive one. The reason why I wrote a letter was I designed Tokyo Metropolitan Gymnasium next to the site in the way back 1990. And this time we asked to not make the volume too high, big, and building too high. So we shrunk quite a bit of part of building underneath. And then I saw this one. And you see, people could only see a bigness after the building was built. But it's very difficult to imagine the building on drawing or in the model. But with these pictures, it shows how large this one is in a very narrow sort of site where we had old Olympic Stadium built in 1964. It's a big sort of thing in the Meiji Shrine. It's inner court is here, outer court here. And this is one of the very nice sort of view of Baroque style, the cityscape. And then you see like one. And so the reason why I wrote essay was that perhaps as an architect who knows a little bit better than others should be responsible to announce, to point out this to the public. So now, as Olympic approaching, we knew the re-estimate of this project does not come into 1.7 billion. Instead, almost near to original 3 billion. And now people, media became very concerned with what we should do. Your question?
Okay. I have a question to Mr. Maki, because if you look at the history of Olympics in Tokyo, there was a plan before 1964, which Hideto Kishida had been preparing, and then that did not go through, but he made an effort to protect this site, and instead of this site, I believe he moved the site to Komazawa.
Yeah.
So it's been a very long history of everybody, including architects and planners and even politicians, trying to protect the beauty of this site. And so my question is, why did they plan on this site, one? And then how did they come to plan such a big stadium?
I think you see, in Japan, when there is a national program or agenda, they often summon the committee of advisors. And they decided to have this huge white elephant. And with the retractive roof system here. But since this does not give enough light to keep the turf underneath, they had a very elaborate system, mechanical system, to give proper the temperature and the moisture and wind circulation. But it is a very, very expensive thing. And furthermore, the retractive roof system is huge and complicated under this particular system. And there is no sort of solution yet found. And that is also one of the big problems. And just last year, the Yokohama was visited by Queen Elizabeth III. And there's a big question of whether the ship could go under the bridge or not. But fortunately, Queen Elizabeth leaves after 3 or 4 days, whereas this big building would stay next 50 years, 100 years. And when you look at the section here, it's as big as typical Japanese housing unit. And then assembling those unit components, all in different sizes because of this shape. It's an enormous sort of costly thing. Plus assembly in a small site to put together and lift it up requires time and so on. That's it.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah.
What's the current condition? Because I think there's two-fold question. One is, you think this is one of the reasons you got involved is it's one of the biggest, largest controversy in architecture you have seen in your lifetime.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So somehow, by not your choice, but you got involved because you felt it's necessary for you to speak.
Yes, I have been involved in many ways in holding a symposium and then media people visiting my house and so on. But I think now the people involved in making this building began to realize that the opposition is very strong. And we'll see. In the next couple of months would be very, very important, for public to know how they are going to act and so on, react.
Right, so he's inadvertently became an activist. And also you made a statement that this is your last chance to the government.
Sure.
So what are the choices?
Well, I hope they realized that they have so much difficulty in executing this original scheme, and there must be another way, because Zaha Hadid only responded to this program. So I can't really, criticize her too much. And yet, the shape of this particular one is so expensive, and probably there must be initiative taken by the government or ministry or the Japanese architects, because Zaha was only hired a design consultant. And there's a Japanese team which is responsible for any problems for this project. And I hope they're going to rethink, because the time is running out. And if they're going to have a new option, it must be executed sooner. That's it. Then now we go to Okra.
Oh yes, I think I just want to ask you my pet activist. I am also an environment preservation activist to try to save Hotel Okura. And I've been asking Mr. Maki about the state of it, because it's a very micro scale preservation issue, but it's kind of related to this large Olympic issue about entire attitude in Japan about not really looking at its own tradition or culture in a way it considered it cultural asset, or in case of Olympic Stadium, why can't they come up with the wisdom and clever methods to build something which is more cost effective using more advanced technology. In both issues, we think Japan and Tokyo is capable of preserving Okura, and then there should be an alternative way to build a more cost-effective and efficient stadium. But what's the status of Okura, as you know?
Well, they have a main building and annex. And the new project is based on the assumption that the annex will be sold at a high price to somebody, and then using this capital, they are going to rebuild the old one to be much higher and bigger. And the opposition of many people, particularly from foreign come, by the fact that the central lobby is something very memorable and wonderful for those people. And it was designed by Taniguchi Yoshiro. And, but he passed away a long time ago. And now with this strong criticism against the demolition, that Okra people would like try to save at least this central lobby, but not saving, but recreating in a new sort of building. And Junior, Taniguchi Junior, the architect of MoMA, is involved, and he might be assigned to recreate further sort of places. But he is not responsible for the entire building. But he's a very capable and wonderful architect, and I hope that at least the image of this central lobby will be resolved in the summer.
I think we'd like to open now to questions from the audience. We have some remaining time. Do you have any questions to Mr. Maki? Are you in awe of his work and body? There's nothing to say. There's somebody from the back or no?
ちょっとヒアリングプログラムあるからインタープレートしてくださいね。クエスチョンありがとうございます。すごくたくさん。
Okay, yes.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that you enjoy working with Corten, And I'd like to ask you to elaborate on that, what the appeal of Corten is for you.
後天のマテリアルをよく好きだとおっしゃったので、なぜですか？どういう？
It's still the steel is something you have to paint over it, but the curtain itself can stay and could be a good. It has a good weathering sort of quality, and just like a stone or a brick, you don't have to add something to that. So it's a reason I like curtain. It's also tough material, and sometimes it gives a wonderful sort of materiality.
Any other questions? Because if you don't, oh, okay, yes. Lance?
How do you, in terms of new buildings, do you have, in terms of new buildings, do you have any thoughts about the new building that big Björk Engels revealed yesterday for the site of number 2 World Trade Center?
タワー2についてどう思いますか？ビアゲンゲルスのビッグ。
Well, I know the latest news on number 2. They're originally designed by Norman Foster, right?
Yes.
It's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, according to news, I think it might be redesigned by somebody else. That's all I know.
Oh, okay. We'll leave him in peace on that. Yes.
I know some of your early research looked at traditional Japanese and European towns, like in Italy and Greece.
Which building is it?
Some of your early research from Harvard and
いろいろ町やいろいろな地方の都市とか、昔の村作りとか、なんか随分昔のリサーチの。
And I'm curious how that research looking at traditional towns and villages influenced your thoughts about metabolism and your more later work.
The metabolism is the one I was involved in 1960, and we had a few architects. But our idea is that we could work out our own idea freely, but always concerned with the city. That is only the common basis. And each took different direction in expressing their premises. And Kurokawa did a famous Nakagin Tower, small scale. And Kikutake did the ocean, what was that in Okinawa, the World Fair and so on. But their approach was more for techno-utopia. And mine was a little bit different. Because of my educational background and certain experiences in different places, I was more interested in a humanistic approach in architecture too. And I published the essay called Oku, where the certain Japanese characteristics are analyzed and also very well sort of received and read. And today I didn't show the projects which shows this oakness with a sense of depth in the space. But I think I'm always trying to do something with our Japanese background, though I don't want to imitate all the Japanese style to our buildings design. That's this answer to your question.
Some more, there's somebody who was raising hand over there. Next. No, after him, Suzanne.
Would I be correct? I was in Japan many years ago, and I was taking, of course, many pictures, and then I found myself finally wanting to simply record the sound of people's footsteps on the stone stairway at a temple. It was a very quiet feeling and a very intimate feeling. Is it fair to say that Japanese architecture in general, the preference is for the smaller, the more local, the intimate? Is that the low rise? Is that a fair thing to say?
日本に行った時に人の足音なんかを自分で記録していて、なんかそのなんか雰囲気っていうのがとても良くて、だから日本の建築は全体的にその小さい親密な空間っていうものを大切にする。
Yes, that's as you might have observed. I think our culture is very related to sometimes smallness and gentleness and so on. And some people, architects, also try to express this very much. And as you know, the quality of architecture could be better founded in smaller buildings too.
Suzanne, did you have?
Yes, it is a quick clarification right here. You said that Ford World Trade Center, which opened last year, was partially completed. Could you just elaborate on what remains?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, and the part responsible by Silverstein Company completed, and with maybe now busy to provide the rental space, but just behind Greenwich Street, there is a Church Street, and first under the ground, first to a third floor is not owned by Silverstein Company, but Port Authority. They are responsible for completing. And they are also very slow, but like India. And,
Worse than India.
and you see, it must complete access from underground to our floor, and also from metro station, and also they have to allow the people to complete the third floor for food court, and etc., etc. And still, I asked when they complete the building, and the answer I received was end of this year. Incredible.
Well, last question, very quick one. Yes.
Yeah.
So I read about your Ford World Trade Center building, that it was an incredibly difficult execution because of the surface, the plain surface that was required for it to act like a mirror. Could you please elaborate on that?
とても難しい作る工程が難しかったもので、例えば黒い磨いた石を磨いたとか。
Yes. As you know, architects always face the series of problems, challenges, but solving those one by one, it gives a tremendous pleasure.
Well, I think it's been such a wonderful evening. I'd like to thank Mr. Maki for an amazing presentation.
Thank you very much.